The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome back to another fine and fierce week on the Brandon Peters Show. On today's episode, we are discussing the 1993 Robert Townsend film, The Meteor Man. Joining me for the discussion, I'd like to give a warm welcome to the host of A Nightmare on Fierce Street podcast, Sharai Bohannon.
Hi, Brandon.
I was like, oh, here it is. And then I totally... Whoo! All right. Well, hey, I'm very excited to have you. Let's get to know you a bit for my listeners and stuff before hopping into Meteor Man. So you have a horror podcast. I tend to have horror people on my show a lot because that's my wheelhouse as well. And you have A Nightmare on Fear Street, which just began like August of last year.
Yeah.
So our shows are about the same age.
Oh my God, that's awesome. They're in the same kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yay.
September.
I love that. We were late August, so like doesn't even count. Like we were like the last week.
Okay. Well, that was my original launch date was supposed to be the after Labor Day, but then I pushed towards the end of September. But well, we're within a month of each other.
That's all that matters. Yeah. No, like we started it thinking 8 friends would listen because you have those 8 that are always like, I'm gonna care. And it turns out a lot of our friends were like, I also like genre, and we never talked about that. And I also like your hot takes and listening to you drink. And I was like, well then. And then those friends told friends, and now we're international, and that's just weird and wild that people are listening to us have our rants and disputes because we can't agree on a movie to save our souls.
Yeah. So like, how did it just start up with like you and your co-host? Like, let's do a podcast, or is this in the works for a while? Like, I had a podcast, one of my shows. It was a year before it got recorded. A lot of planning and stuff, but
oh yeah, no, we were precious fool babies. Like my friend and I met in undergrad many moons ago, and we would like just get drunk and watch horror movies when we weren't like studying or doing rehearsals and all that because we were theater kids. And so when the pandemic hit and I moved here to Indiana, where I know no one for the most part, I was like spending a lot of time talking to him about horror movies because like we're both stuck at home and we're not creating because we do theater and that's not really happening live. So it's a different situation. So we were like, what if we stopped talking about our horror movies and drinking silently? And what if we started recording them? And so we had like a little meeting and we like picked our name and we talked about what we think we're going to do, which is never the case because you're going to change it. As soon as you start recording, you're like, oh no, this doesn't work. Yeah.
It evolves too. It's always like when people like, when you check out a new podcast, you should probably go to a recent one and then go back.
Our format changed because we started like late August. And then like when you come back for us and for Scream, which I think was our November show, different format because we were like, why are we recapping? We don't need to recap. People know these movies.
Right.
Stop that. So yeah, it's like abrupt. And then like, it's just like people who listen to them in order will catch that. People who pop around will be like, what am I listening to? What happened? What changed? And they're welcome. But yeah, we started doing it. We met up the next weekend after we had our little meeting to talk about things that we thought were going to happen. And like a friend like drew us our first logo. And we were just like, let's record it. And then we recorded it and it felt fun and fine. And so of course the next day my friend was like, I edited the episode. Should we just go ahead and start today? And we were like, okay. And that first season was rough because we were always like recording and having to turn around and put it up. And that's why we took a pause to be like, let us learn from those baby mistakes. Let us start recording ahead of schedule. So that way we're not like, oh no, our guest fell through. What are we going to do tomorrow? Right. Yeah. Live and learn. But also podcasting is fun. And it can cost $0 if you're not like super, I need it to be pretty and gorgeous, which we're not.
Hey, get it out there. That's one thing I tell people with the podcast indie group that I co-manage and stuff is like, what can be important? We can talk about equipment all you want, but get it done first. As long as you commit to improving, just get it out there, because you could sit and then never get anything out, just building and building and preparing, and then nothing happens.
Exactly. Like the content is more important. That's what people are really there for, because our first episodes are a little bit rough because we didn't have mics back then. We didn't get mics until we were well on our way, because a friend was like, sometimes you get drunk and roll away from the computer and I can't hear you. Could I buy you both mics? And I was like, I will not stop you. And so that's when like our production quality went up a
You got like
little
a
bit.
podcast sugar daddy right away there.
Right? I was like, oh my God, yay. But also fun to the rest of my life. But yeah, no, like just, I feel like technology is also just so smart. Like Anchor is right there and you can just like record that on your little iPhone, which has a really cool mic. I'm an Android girl, but I have to admit that that iPhones do a lot of things. I just realized I did not plug in my computer and she was letting me know she was going to die about it.
Oh, there you go. Hey.
Yay.
Oh, I should, you know what? Thank you, because I usually have mine plugged in.
Yeah.
This is the best part of the show right here. That'll probably make the uncut one, but
this is why Zoom is amazing for podcasts.
Oh, brighter.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've definitely had to do that while we were streaming live before, because like we invited a guest up and we were on StreamYard for Thirsty Thursday, and my computer was like, you forgot to do something. And I was like, oh no.
Right.
So I just had to like go away, and they're like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm plugging it in. Like,
Excellent. Oh yeah. Keep rolling away from those computers. See what more funds come in.
Maybe a whole new computer. Like yeah.
There you go. Do you have any like favorite episodes of your show so far that you'd be like, this is the one where I just felt like it was awesome after the feedback was great?
Oh my God. I would say I have a couple. If we're going off of new stuff with the new format for people who hate recaps, which I respect, Tales from the Hood, which was one of our February episodes.
Yeah.
Amazing episode. Like it's one of the ones where people gave us compliments and I wasn't awkward about it, because like as an artist, it's just hard to take a compliment because then you're one of those weirdos. And so you're like, no, but this is wrong with it. But for that one, I was like, it is good. Thank you. I have to go think about this because I did something right.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. From our first season, Stanley Kubrick was an asshole, which is everything you need to know in the title. But like, it is a very long episode, and we do recap it. And I am sorry, but it's one of the things I think I'm proudest of.
There you go. Gotta have that. Yeah. Sometimes you have those. Sometimes you have those ones that you feel really good about, and then nothing. And then sometimes it all comes together. And then sometimes the trashy ones they liked, they're like, oh.
We've had so many movies that are quality. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about this one. And people are like, crickets. And then you do something like Body Snatchers in a Bathtub, 5 Buckets of Blood. And people are like, oh my God. And I'm like, are you serious? Like,
and also they're like, oh, these are my people. I never get podcasts that talk about this. So that's part of, hey, we're talking about the Meteor Man today. How many podcasts are talking about the Meteor Man?
So many should. I'm going to save it, but so many should. Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about it. Yeah. Where would you like to see A Nightmare on Fear Street go from here? Any kind of changes you'd like to see, or like areas you want to tackle, or big projects set ahead for it?
Right now, I want to keep expanding our guest pool, because we started out with just like friends of ours, and then we started bringing in random fans we were meeting on Twitter and Instagram, and we're bringing in like filmmakers. And so I just want to keep growing that pool, because there's always more voices that are left out. And our podcast is about intersectional lenses looking at horror, because a lot of us are left out. And so I feel like we can always do better. And so making those connections and making sure people know that they're wanted and we're serious is something we need to keep doing until we get there. Yeah.
Excellent. And like any artist that isn't rolling in the millions, you got your hand in a lot of things beyond horror and beyond the podcast. You're a playwright.
Yes.
Which pretty exciting. A produced one. They've had stuff overseas in like London.
Yeah, that's my baby. I sent a 10-minute about a puppet at a bad first date on an app. And London was like, we love this. It's on our scratch night. And I was like, London, are you my people? I didn't get to go. In hindsight, I wish I pushed harder and found funding and time to go, because who knows when I'll get to travel internationally again.
Okay.
But that's one of my favorite things to ever happen on my resume. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. And I have to ask about this Punching LaBoot Festival.
Oh yes.
Is that named after Neil LaBoot?
Yes, Neil LaBute inspired that. So I'm in a lot of different Facebook groups, and some woman somewhere was like, I'm thinking of trying out my monologues audition with. I've been using Neil LaBute and some other person who's problematic.
Mhm.
And nobody commented because we didn't know what to say or do. and so like I left Facebook because I didn't want to like shame her, but I was like on Twitter, I'm like, why are we still using Neil LaBute when he does not like women? Examples, all of his work. And so like me and some other playwrights talked about it, and one of them, who I don't know if she wants me to name her name, but she's a dear friend of mine, was like, I don't want to talk about Neil LaBute anymore unless we're punching him. And I was like, ha ha ha, punching LaBute should be a festival. Ha ha ha. I don't have to take a joke. I have to always make something, don't I? And I was like, yeah. And so we got to do it once before COVID shut us down in year 2. And what it is a bunch of films coming together to create work that we put up, usually in a found space, or someone like loans us a space to do it. And we raise money for different, like, oh my God, I can't use words. Different charities focused on helping women. I want to say we did a battered women's shelter.
Okay.
The last time, like we did it more than once. We were going to do it twice, and then COVID. But yeah, and it was like really good to raise money because people care. Even though we're all poor, starving artists, they care.
Right.
And so they're like, I want to be a part of this, because back then we didn't put out a call for scripts for the first year. I just like put it on my social media, and my co-producer put it on her social media, and we had all these like badass playwrights who were like, here is my work. Let me know if you would like another. And I was like, oh yes. Yeah. And so it was right. It was the festival of my dreams. And like I was like, so I don't want to hear when other people tell me they can't find women playwrights to do things, because so many flocked to this cause. And so many flocked this next year when we like put out an actual call for scripts. We had so many playwrights who I love and admire, and we'd whittled it down. And then it was like, we can't produce anything live this year. That's irresponsible, even if we could.
Yeah. So that caught my eye when I saw it. And I hope this is like a negative thing, the punching LaBute, because that man, he had a good run. People liking him, but I mentioned it off air. I told you I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He shot his breakout film in the Company of Men up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I lived up there during that. He lived in Fort Wayne after that for a bit, and so multiple things. My friend worked at Blockbuster Video at the time, and he would come in to rent. And he'd be like, I need a Blockbuster card. He'd be like, he's like, Blockbuster card. And he's like, I think you know which account this is. He's like, I don't care. I need your Blockbuster card. It's got a scanning thing on the back that I can scan and pull up your account, Mr. LaBute. And he's like, fine, and get all mad. And then there was a day where he wasn't on the cover, but he was in like a picture of Entertainment Weekly. Like if you open up inside, and they had those like always people standing around and like premieres things. He was in one of them, and he stood by the magazine rack, just like walking around waiting for people to open it up and stuff. He's like, my friend was like, it was the most pathetic thing I've ever seen.
Like his Twitter account, and like we don't know 100% certain that he runs it because it's part of his whatever his sci-fi show is. I've already got the name of. I
quit paying attention to him.
I was shocked he had a show because like we were using the hashtag punching LaBute, and his 5 fans found us, all 5 of them, and they were like, how dare you? Why are you lying about him? It's like, nobody said anything about him. We said there's a festival called Punching LaBute. Where's the lie? Also, what is this show you're talking about? Yeah. And so he started liking it from that account, or the person who runs that account. But we're pretty sure it's his. Or was it the time?
Gotcha. Well, he also, so I did a commercial for a thing called the Stop the Madness campaign, and it was produced by Mark Archer, who produced In the Company of Men for Neil LaBute. And I also went to a seminar Mark Archer spoke at, and everybody who was working on the commercial had pretty much worked on In the Company of Men. Him and Aaron Eckhart, none of them had anything positive to say about either of those. And like LeBoot really pushed, like Mark Archer spent so much credit card debt, insurance money off a car accident, and everything on In the Company of Men. And he said there was a lot of it I could have saved had Neil LeBoot not been a complete dick and pushed stuff. And there was an Eckhart cost him a lot of money because that guy was apparently a prima donna who he would tell you when he got the take he wanted. They'd be like, "Oh, we got it." He'd be like, "I want like 3 more," and they're using film, and that's expensive, and it's super. And this is back when independent movies were independent movies; they didn't have celebrities in them and cost millions, and so they had a problem. None of those people ever worked with Neil LaBute again. They made another film all together called American Real with David Carradine, not realizing what a drunk Carradine was at the time. This is pre-Kill Bill, but yeah, Neil LaBute. I'm happy to see it titled Punchy Louie, and bad things have come. Funny thing is, my favorite film of his is The Wicker Man because it's hilarious.
It's so bad. I love it.
It is so good. It's mainly Cage, but you know.
Nick Cage, like literally, he is an experience. Mm-hmm. He is an event.
He's aware of every film he's in. That's what I love about him, and he commits. He will find like, oh, is this a goofy thing? All right, well, guess who's here? And then he'll be like, oh, okay, we got a good drama here. Boom, there's the Oscar winner again.
Right. That's the reason the Community episode asking if Nicolas Cage is good or bad lands so well, because we really don't know. It's just chaotic. Because he'll give you Raising Arizona, and you're like, this is hysterical. Mm-hmm. And then he'll give you like most of the things he did right after. And then he'll give you something great. And you're like, you can do the things. Right. I don't understand. I love that he can turn it on and off. And I love being like, is this the one I come back for? And people being like, no. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah. Or they're like, yes. I'm like, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Like I think like now since he does so many movies all the time, low budget, like I think the average is like every 5 to 6, you get that one, like, oh shoot, he really can still do that. Like he had that movie like Joe many years ago. That was really good. And yeah, so I've always been a Cage fan. And that's mainly why I enjoy, not the Neil LaBute excellence of remaking The Wicker Man, but, Leland, like lastly, you're also a pop culture critic too. We all write about things we like and give our opinions. But whereabouts have you had your work displayed?
Oh yeah, I did a really cool article for the Every Girl, where they let me talk about Shrill and being fat in America, and it ended up being one of my favorite things I've ever written. I've also written for Book and Film Club, which I no longer write for. And like I have a couple of pitches out and about with a couple of horror magazines. Okay. And I used to review plays back when we were going places in Chicago. So you can find me at like Picture This Post, and you can find me at like Scopy magazine and those sort of like boutique places.
That The Meteor Man, written and directed by and starring Robert Townsend. It also stars, and here comes the long list of Maria Gibbs, Eddie Griffin, Robert, Gillum? Mm-hmm. Sorry. Robert Gillum, James Earl Jones, Roy Fagan, Don Cheadle, Bill Cosby, Big Daddy Kane, Frank Gorshin, Sinbad, Nancy Wilson, Luther Vandross, Another Bad Creation, Naughty by Nature, Cypress Hill, Tiny Lister, Layla Rochon, John Witherspoon, and Biz Marquis. Like, I made a note. I was telling my friend Aaron Neuwirth, I'm like, so if you were available in 1993, you were in this movie. It's about a high school teacher from a troubled inner city Washington, D.C. neighborhood who becomes a superpowered hero and takes on the gang that has been terrorizing his streets. So, Sharai, what I do with the show is I like to hear why this movie was one you wanted to bring to the show. We had a list. Yes. That one just struck me. It was at the top of the list, but it struck me right away. So
like when I was a kid in the 90s, because I was definitely a 90s baby, I remember the daycare that my mother worked at, and I basically lived at when she worked there, and when she didn't work there, we wouldn't go, but it was a whole thing. But like, we found it at a $2 theater, and so it was like a group field trip. So the whole daycare went.
Awesome.
Because in the 90s, you did not get a lot of happy Black people in media. I mean, to be fair, you still don't. But like, it was like, we have to like go and support this. Grab all of the children. Everybody get their parents, give them the like forms and $2. And so we just wrote out in all these like multiple vans. And I remember going and I remember being like, what is this? Is Robert Townsend a superhero? Oh my God. And it just sort of stuck with me in a way that I think a lot of kids take to like things that were actually geared towards them,
right?
Like Barney and whatever. I don't know. I was never a real kid, but like, it was like my little thing. And so like for the couple of years I was on HBO later on, I would like watch it and it would be like random HBO, not like HBO, but like HBO blah, 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 HBO blah, 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 3 hours later. And then it just went away. And so I had not seen it since I was maybe 10, maybe 11. But it stuck with me because again, you don't get that many portrayals of like just like happy Black people doing things that are right, especially from the 90s. Like there are so many stereotypes.
Well, I was just talking with Scott Mendelson. He's the week before your episode time last night. We were like, we've had this thing where it's like the 90s, though you got Meteor Man, which he's a happy superhero, but you also got Steel with Shaq, you got Spawn, and you got Blade, and it felt like in the 90s, I said like one of the things was there seemed to be a lot of opportunities for like Black filmmakers, but like there were Black movies back then, but the problem was getting the white audiences to go and appreciate and see the Black, and then somehow it became tentpole city and we went backwards in terms of those opportunities, but it was on like a good track in the 90s. And then all of a sudden when X-Men, Spider-Man pick up and like Pirates and all that stuff, all of a sudden we regressed horribly with that, because in the 90s you had like John Singleton doing things. You always had there were Black movies, but they didn't push white people to go to them, or there wasn't a voice to respect them. So with Meteor Man, I was excited to revisit. I think I saw this in the 90s. I remember the poster, and I probably picked, I like superhero stuff. Robert Townsend made Hollywood Shuffle. That's a really cool movie to check out as well. But I'm like, this movie got poorly reviewed. It did poor box office. But my thing was, as with all like movies like this, like it was a Black superhero movie comedy coming out in a time with dominantly white film critic writers. So was it correctly assessed? Was it correctly advertised, or advertised enough to get people? So because I think this is a pretty damn good movie. Like
I have seen much worse superhero movies. So I have seen them constantly because I'm a nerd. And so I'm always like, let me go try it, even though I don't want to.
Yeah.
I feel like the Abominations DC have been turning out much worse than this.
If you have I'm saying, like if you have critics, if you have like half Black critics, half white critics evenly, how does the reviews fare? How does the Rotten Tomato meter look now? Like, is it, I think it would bump up, or if we had the kind of the cultural, we're not perfect as a culture now, but we much more like as like white people will go see these or respect these or give things a shot more than back then.
It depends on the movie and who's in it, because we still have actors today who are famous with Black people. And then like my wife was like, who is this? I'm like, this person's been acting for 25 years. You don't know her? Like, right. And it's like, I might have seen her once. And I was like, but how? You live for the genre she's in. You should know her more than I do, because I don't even watch that genre. And I feel like part of it is because society is always saying negative things about the Black films. Like this, again, was poorly reviewed, but it also wasn't given money. And I know for a fact for Hollywood Shuffle, Robert Townsend had to like empty out his like bank accounts and things for that. Because I saw a documentary and he talked about it. And I, as a kid, loved Hollywood Shuffle. I loved anything Robert Townsend did as a kid, because he was always uplifting Black people, which, I mean, you have like the Wayans and that whole dynasty. Let's be fair, it's a dynasty at this point. There's like different generations. I can't keep track anymore. You had them and you had Robert Townsend. And then you had a bunch of serious movies that were like rated R, and there's going to be like a lot of drug use and whatnot. And so like you couldn't even access that as a kid on purpose. But when your parents went to sleep, you would. And you're just like, oh, another crackhead, cool. oh, another sex worker, cool. And so
I like Townsend. Like he's a guy like just the best thing that probably happened to him was like them picking Eddie Murphy over him for Saturday Night Live, because he gets to go and create his own path. And Murphy didn't forget, like, he directs Raw, which is one of the best
Yeah.
stand-up shows, period. And then, you know, he's Hollywood Shuffle, the Five Heartbeats, showing just like range. And then he doesn't disappear after the 90s, but he did
More producing.
Yeah, he's more producing. He did Black Lightning recently, a couple episodes of that show, and starring, directing. But he carved a nice own interesting filmmaker path. And I mean, it's not like you know, Spike Lee kind of like had a similar thing with like Woody Allen, and like Singleton made his own thing. Townsend has his own thing that goes through here, and I love that.
Yeah. He does not get nearly enough respect because, again, like you have this cluster of filmmakers who are actual Black filmmakers in the 90s when it's really hard. It's really hard. I can't even begin to imagine. I'm watching the documentaries and I'm like reading the accounts, but like I know what it's like today to be a Black artist, so I can't even fathom. Yeah, and you have him like funding this and like sticking true to like his ideas and his theories, and like giving you this like assortment of Black people who, I mean, James Earl Jones alone probably cost more than the movie was worth. Let's be honest.
But James Earl Jones, the guy who probably would take a cut to help get this made.
And I'm sure him and a lot of the actors did. Even Sinbad is just randomly here. And you're just like, and I feel like it's a testament to Robert Townsend because these people want to be in whatever the messages he has and they want to be near him.
A lot of them haven't taken off at this point too. So he's launching and he knows the talent. He knows that's...
Baby Don Cheadle. Yeah. I forgot Baby Don Cheadle was in here with his like golden fro. And I was like, oh my God. I hadn't seen this movie.
And what's he aged like physically 5 years since then? Like
he's getting younger. I don't understand. I think he did get hit by a meteor, and we haven't talked about that. Like it's just, you have all of these people, and they go on to do amazing things. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of them are no longer with us, which I hate because I feel like this movie does deserve a resurgence. I know that Bill Cosby is here, which I forgot about. So when he appeared, I was like, ugh. And I'm like, that might be part of the reason it's not streaming anywhere. Because I've been a very vocal advocate about this movie needs to be on Netflix or HBO or something, just because it's, again.
There's a Blu-ray out there from Olive Films, so it did make the jump to high definition. So there is a...
I had to order that because, again, I have not seen this movie since I was a kid because it disappeared. And so when you were like, from your list, I want to do this. I'm like, I have a reason to track down this Blu-ray. So that is what's in my like PS3 right now.
Yeah, awesome.
Because I'm old school.
That's I'm all physical media all the way. I do use digital, folks. I do use the digital, but it's nice. I wish we would have had some bonus features or, you know, an interview, but Olive Films, they don't typically do those a lot.
To be fair, they probably weren't given the opportunity to have bonus features and things because they barely had funding to make the movie. So I doubt they were like, oh, so let's get a director's commentary. Yeah. Which I would start a Kickstarter for tonight. Robert Townsend has a Twitter. If somebody wants to help me get him on track to do that, I will start the Kickstarter. I will do all the work. I want it.
There we go. There we go. Yes. Start it now. And yeah, he created this hero there was a comic book after, but this is his own creation. And that's, people weren't afraid to do that around in the 90s either. It didn't have to be, it was a superhero. Doesn't matter now. What's it based on? Nothing.
I especially love that because, again, we have so few Black superheroes compared to everything else that happens. Because, again, you have Blade, you have Black Panther, you have Spawn, you have Blank Man, which also doesn't get discussed.
That comes out a year later. Yeah, it was just kind of funny, which is another funny little movie. I love,
David
Allen Greer and
David Allen Greer was everywhere in the 90s. I have not seen Blank Man since I was a child either, but I remember finding it super endearing because his costume was so homemade. Yeah, and I was like, he's definitely from my neighborhood. I see him and I want him to succeed.
The comic book movies of the superhero movies of the time when this came out that this would have been riffing on or anything like that, or you would have had to compare, it was just the Superman films, the Donner ones from the 80s. Those were already done with. We had one with 2 Batman movies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like The Rocketeer. So this really kind of like it plays with like Superman mythos type things, but really its own thing and a riff just on a superhero thing. Like I love that his powers are just kind of whatever things,
Yeah.
never really explain, but
They were so pure. His
yeah.
powers were so pure. Like talking to his dog,
Yes.
absorbing a book by touch, and him having the ability to fly, but being afraid to fly. That is just so adorable. I want to put the superhero in my pocket and protect him from the world because he's too precious. He's too pure.
Right. Yeah. And I'll tell you the one thing that I think this movie is golden and I love about it, that when I watched and it just felt was it feels like it comes from a place of like earnestness. It's very genuine, and rather than like the entire world like a superhero has to today, it's interested in Jefferson Reed's world, and there about comes the stakes and what's important to him, and being in danger, and the world he has to save is his like neighborhood, and his character it has powers of bigger like scale things. Like this is big and personal and feels heavier than if it was some maniacal guy trying to blow up the world. Like he's got his neighborhood to protect. That's what's important to him. There are comic-y villains in that gang, but it's just I don't know, just the way it feels just like honest, and like this is what this guy wouldn't just have to go fight some evil guy from outer space or whatever, and his things are very human, what he wants to improve and help and where he's at. Like he never forgets he's Jefferson Reed, which I love.
I like literally he is the same person consistently, and I agree that's one of the things that makes his character compelling because oftentimes superheroes get their superpowers and it's like, oh no, I'm different. I have to like showboat for a second. And he's like, no, I'm still here for my community. I need to make sure so-and-so's getting their meds, so-and-so's getting their groceries, the kids are getting to school. And so like one of the like moments of actual violence in this movie when they show up to shoot at him and he's like catching all of the bullets. And I was like, I, as a kid, did not appreciate that this is like a symbol of what he's been doing the whole movie, trying to protect everybody but himself. And I just love that moment because now that I am an older supposed adult, I'm like, oh yeah, no, symbolism. Whatever in my head as a kid, I was like, he's caught him on, yeah. But now I'm like, oh no, he's putting himself out there limb for limb, and they're as a community, they were sort of kind of okay with him and supporting him, but still sort of using him until that turn when it's like, oh, wait, we turned our back on him and he's getting his ass kicked. Maybe we should.
Long enough to see himself become a villain, or they're done with him, or taken advantage of that he's just going to be there. But that scene where he stands up for himself, very powerful for like a comedy movie, and just watching him just get pounded and stuff, it turns into a big overdone fight in the end, but for that moment it's really strong and emotional, and not the kind of like things that I felt would be tugging at me when watching the Meteor Man.
Right. And again, it's another testament to Robert Townsend. He understands humor and heart in a way that a lot of us just don't get. He's on a different level, and so he's able to like make you laugh, but also like gonna go outside and get beat up real quick. And so you're like, oh no, somebody help him. And like poor Eddie Griffin, who also was like 12 in this movie. I don't understand time and how it works, because all these comics are people who I've always known were like older than me, but as a kid seeing this, I didn't realize like they weren't like 40, they were like 20 something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they always feel older, even though when you're watching a movie where they're younger than you now, you still feel they're older. And this is Eddie Griffin before he like was allowed to be himself, because I'm like, that is not that's Eddie Griffin, but that's not how he dresses. That is not how it was very tamed Eddie Griffin.
This is
while
Eddie Griffin
still being Eddie Griffin.
This is Eddie Griffin at the job interview. This is not Eddie Griffin after he got the job.
That's great. Yeah.
No, he's like, I would like to work here.
I will always say I saw Foolish in the theater, Eddie Griffin. I was there. I saw it. I was one of like 8, but I was there in the theater when that came out. Oh gosh.
I kind of want to check in on him because I've not seen him in a while, but he was everywhere for a minute, and he even had a show with Malcolm Jamal Warner on UPN before UPN became CW.
Gotcha. Yeah, they
So,
tried
yeah.
to make him a thing. I know, like Master P launched him a bit. Like Master P got
Yeah.
on there, and then they got Undercover Brother, and then boop, I guess
Yeah.
didn't hit like they wanted, and you move on to the next thing. You know, like that.
Yeah, which is sad. But like a lot of the people in this movie, I have not seen them in a while, and that makes me
Right.
sad. And because of all of this pandemic, I do kind of want to check in on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be like, are they okay?
Go to their
Like,
IMDb. Okay, working.
yeah.
Okay.
What is their next project? I'm gonna
Yes.
go and support it if it's safe to go to theater by then.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I mean, I just before the episode for this, we did Tomb Raider Cradle of Life, and Jan de Bont, the director, hasn't worked since. But he's done like a couple little things, but he's never he hasn't directed, he hasn't shot. He was a cinematographer, he hadn't shot anything. I think he's got a producer name on a couple things like recently, but just gone. I'm like, guy was talented. I know he had 3 bombs in a row, but you know.
I mean, a lot of people have 3 bombs in a row and they keep working, and so I'm
Right, yeah,
always
yeah. There's a
curious.
lot of failing upward. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's always very telling because I'm just like, okay, I see you.
But I figured he'd go back to cinematography after, you know, bombs directing, and then, but nope. Just maybe he's just done. He said he had a bad experience on that movie, but
Yeah.
hey, but yeah, these people, I mean, Townsend, like, I hope he's happy with what he's doing. Like, I'd rather see him more public eye, but
Yeah. I like literally we were watching, I forgot the name of the documentary, but it was like a series of documentary. It was a docu-series on Netflix. We found it like towards the top of the pandemic when I had
Okay.
roommates in Chicago. I forgot the name of it. I keep wanting to say When You See Us, and that's not it. That's a whole different thing. But it was like him and a bunch of other like Black filmmakers
Okay.
from like the 90s and beyond.
Mhm.
And so you got to like hear a little bit about like the history of Black cinema
Okay.
and like how hard it was in every decade leading up to this one, which is how I found out he had to like do Hollywood Shuffle on his own dime. So like I want to go back and revisit that because I've not seen that in decades either. But like
makes it more impressive when you have context like that. Like, I don't think in this streaming era and just checklist watching of classic films and stuff, that context of a film is, well, you should just pop a film in and enjoy it. But I think sometimes context is important. Like, if you watch Hollywood Shuffle, you're like, I want nothing. But if you watch Hollywood Shuffle knowing it was made for like sticks and dimes because that's all he could muster, it then becomes a more impressive feat. Like, people don't understand that. Like, but there's a damn the creator attitude that goes out there now, and they want the mouse to control everything.
Right? No, I would kill for Robert Townsend to be able to make a movie with an actual budget because I feel like, especially knowing he made that one out of his own pocket, and this one probably as well. I haven't like done the research on that because I'm a bad guest, but I know the budget was not for other movies of this genre in the 90s. I would love to see what he could do with an actual budget because he's done so much without money. I can't even imagine.
He'd probably bring back money. I mean, like, I didn't use it all.
Yeah, he's like, I'm so used to making it for $200.
Yeah. But that's where the best. I mean, we know Robert Townsend because when it comes to it, he's one of the best at overcoming, improvising, making stuff work for 5 cents. And there are people like James Wan, for example, him and Lee Wanell, both them coming from Saw, do Aquaman. Those guys are like some of the best at making $10 look like $3 million. Like, that's where I like where you're challenged. And I always talk about how the reason I love watching slasher movies from the 80s is because nobody gave them all the money they could make them with, but you find the real talent in seeing who could do with that same money or less so much more. And that's and Towns is one of those people. Like, I don't know if I want to give him money. I like what I think. Of course, yes, give him the money he needs. But like, just like, I think he's amazing. He doesn't need it. Like, he's smart to
no, like I always wonder about that because I've been so like by the time this goes up, I should in theory have this article somewhere.
Okay.
So I've been doing this thing where I've been trying to find horror movies without racial trauma. And it's been hard, let me tell you. And I finally have 8, so I might have to just stop and give up on trying to have 10 and just do those 8 and just be done so I can give this article to the place I pitched it. But like it's especially hard because a lot of those like horror movies are mostly horror comedies or they're
Gotcha.
like from the 70s, or they're blaxploitation. And like, it's just, I'm seeing how little funding Black people get for things where they're not being abused. And it's an ongoing
Yeah.
theme, because some of these are like fairly recent. And I'm like, you couldn't give her a couple more thousand for this, but whatever.
Right.
And so it's an ongoing issue, which is part of the reason why like everybody's like on the edge of their seat waiting for Nia DaCosta's Candyman, because we don't have Black women directing films with budgets, let alone in horror.
Right.
Like, it's a unicorn. And so, and so we're all like, yes, please, yes. And I was happy that she's going to be directing something, Captain Marvel sequel, actually.
The Marvels, right?
Yes. She's going to do the second Captain Marvel.
Yeah. So I've been waiting for that Candyman. The original Candyman is like one of my favorite. Like, it was one of the scariest movies I ever fucking seen. I couldn't go in the bathroom at night for a long time.
It gave me a weird relationship with Tony Todd, because he's the Candyman, so clearly that's not right. But also he's just this like really, he's like this like uncle-looking figure, and so it's like, and you see him in other stuff, and you're like, I'm terrified, it's Candyman, but also Tony Todd. And so
he should have been larger than life, and then he should have owned the 90s. I don't know how that didn't happen. That guy, so talented, such leading man charisma, but who knows? He's been consistently working, and I love that. So
he's got stuff coming out.
Nice guy too. I've met him. He's a really cool guy.
A friend of mine met him, and like the scoop is Tony Todd wants to play a dad because he's never done that. And I was like, he's not played a dad. We just all feel like he's our dad, but he's never actually done that. What?
He actually, have you ever seen, what was it called? He was in this movie before all like Night of the Living Dead and Candyman, with Ray Parker Jr. And it is The Raid before The Raid, like in the 80s. And it's Ray Parker Jr. stuck in this apartment building with his gang, and Tony Todd's like the gang leader. He loves talking about it. No one ever asks him about it. But if you ask him, if you meet him, ask him about it, because he'll be like, "Oh, you remember that?" I can't remember the title of it. It's actually not bad. It's got some good 80s cheese, but Ray Parker, the Ghostbusters singer, as a lead in a movie, action movie, in a part. But he plays this gang leader. He loves that movie. He had a great time. He loves that movie. Wish more people saw it. Which was only on VHS. I think someone uploaded it to YouTube, but oh gosh, it's gonna kill me. But
YouTube's where you find everything that's findable, because someone somewhere was like, you know what we need? This movie from the 70s you've never heard of. I'm like, you're right.
Right. I'll put it up until someone takes it down.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do. And then someone else will put it up. And then someone else. And then at some point it'll go to Daily Motion, where they don't take down anything. So.
Oh my God, Daily Motion. Like, that's the Wild West. I found like a lot of the horror noir movies that were mentioned on YouTube, because you can't find them anywhere, and YouTube's like, hey, do you want to see Abby and Blackula? And I'm like, I actually do now, thank you. Like,
which do you like better, Blackula or Scream? Blackula, Scream. Have you seen them both?
I just finished both of them for this thing that I need to like be done with. So I'm torn. I feel like Blackula Scream is amazing because Pam Grier, obviously. And she might be the first Black woman to lead a horror movie, if I'm remembering that right. I think so.
She's got a lot of she's the first woman period action star.
Yeah.
But I love Pam Grier. But that's the second one's got that. I think the second one's like, I think the first one has a better script movie going on.
Yes.
But the second one's way more watchable. Like
yeah. Like, I don't know what changed. Like, maybe they got more money when they got Pam Grier attached or something, because the first one,
they filmed it. So Coffee came out while they were like, she had filmed that before Coffee or something, like she hadn't blown up yet. So when that came out, it was sometime after Coffee, like shortly came out. So they advertised, "Oh, from Coffee, it's Pam Grier." But they didn't know when they shot it that she was going to blow, like that Coffee was going to launch her huge like that.
I don't know what changed then, because like they had a better production, but they had a lesser script. But that's all sequels. I don't want to just like sit here and piss on that one, because like I'm a Batman girl, or I was before Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck, I was all about Batman, and some of those sequels were not great. George Clooney, Val Kilmer, specifically brought it down.
Yeah, but we were talking about the Meteor Man.
Yes.
That's where we're at. So yeah, there's this. I thought the special effects held up pretty well on the Blu-ray that I watched. I was like, okay, these worked. I mean, there's some that like, well, see the strings a little bit, but I thought other than that, like when he got hit by the meteor, gruesome.
That was ridiculously good. I don't know. I need to actually look and see who did the special effects. Because it was a very nice blend of practicals, and we have a little bit of money to light this.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. It was I love that. I feel like practicals hold up better than CGI because when CGI ages out, usually 3 months after it leaves theaters,
right?
It's noticeable. Whereas practicals, you're always a little bit like, this is still cool. Like,
yeah, because you can touch it, like what it feels like. Yeah.
You know, it took time to make that. Like, that meteor was not half-assed. Someone sat there with their paper mache and their light bulbs.
Someone lost sleep trying to light it overnight, trying to figure. Yeah.
And so it means more, and it just, I don't know, it holds up. It's like when someone's grandmother knits you a sweater as opposed to the sweater you buy from Target, which will be holy in a couple of days and shrink.
Right. Yeah. Right. I think too, the practical, when you see them, you're like, how do they do that? And when you imagine how they do that, you see people working, doing all these things. And with CG, you're like, how they do that, and you just see a guy at a computer like, take out, Venmo me. Yeah, that's, I mean, the imagination of how it's made, like there's a lot of complex stuff that goes with CG. I'm not demeaning them, but it's just when we all drool over practical, it's because there's like this like physical labor that goes with it, fights, divorces for a movie, like, they get this stuff taken care of. Some guy with a blood bucket, just like, and an actor having to go through hell to make an effect work. It's
I will always advocate for a movie where, especially the 80s slasher genre, where it's just people with like bottles of ketchup just like losing their minds because they're like, we can't even afford corn syrup. Here's my mom's ketchup. Let's get this done in 2 shots. Yay!
Make it a little darker. You got barbecue sauce we can mix with it. It's kind of dark in the red.
Blend the 2 in with a little bit of brown sugar. So are you making a barbecue sauce? No, I'm making blood. This one we have.
All right. We have a dip after we're done shooting.
Right. Get some chips on Carolyn. What?
Oh gosh. Yeah. This movie has an earnestness. It's got a super, like, it can play as a straight movie. It can play as a superhero movie. It can play as a comedy. Like it, and it never feels like it's jumping around through these or off balance. Like he's got perfect control over it. I mean, the villains, they're evil, but they're some of the funniest things in this. Like the look, the kids, the slinky.
Those tiny babies with the golden hair. Every time I see them marching in or out, like little munchkins from Wizard of Oz, it's like, and they're like threatening and imposing. And I'm just like, this is so adorable. When they all come in with their lunch boxes full of money, and I'm like, oh, you little pricks are adorable. I'm like, that's not. That's not what I was supposed to take away from this.
Oh gosh, it is so funny. I really enjoyed this. It was almost like watching again for the first time, but because I think I can't confidently say I did watch it back then, but I felt like I did, and this would have been something I picked up as a kid easily and enjoyed. It's got all the tropes of a secret identity superhero lore told in like a freshly grounded way, in its own. Like our places we go to are malls, schools.
Yes. He still goes to work, and like everything is normal in the daytime, and he still has like those weird friendships that are trying to like bite him in the ass. And I love that it has all those conversations we see with the other superheroes, but it's not so on the nose. Yeah. Because how often have we seen one of the like 9 superheroes we always see have it's not the costume, it's the man in the costume conversations with their butler or their auntie. And you're like, really, we get it. But like, instead of having that like heartfelt, let's have this monologue, Robert Townsend walks outside and gets beat up, and we're like, It's not the costume. It's the
Yeah.
man. He cares.
He shows, he doesn't tell.
He doesn't. And even when he thinks it's about to be like murdered in the street, it's like there's real fear. And it's not like I have to do this for my community because this and this and this. It's just like, I did this. And for a minute, you're like, where's this movie going?
And then it inspires James Earl Jones to throw records, which they perfectly established at the beginning. Those records are his babies. Like, he cares about them. And here he is sacrificing them to help out Robert Townsend. And I have to say, James Earl Jones with Kid and Play hair needs to happen more often.
I would love to see that. His character had an arc because don't get me wrong, Jeff had one, but his did too, because you see him and he's trying on different hair pieces. Yeah. And he's like not wanting to tell people what happened even though he knows what happened, because he's one of those neighbors, because in these communities that happens. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, he's like, oh no, we've turned our backs on Jeff and I've let this one woman go to the hospital and I didn't say anything. I have to take a stand. And so seeing him have an actual arc, even as a supporting character, is not something we typically get. You're just like, James Earl Jones is here. That's all we needed. And it's like, no, give him more. Yeah.
And he does more with whatever he's given. Like, he's one of the finest actors we've ever had. But and it's hard. Like, I think someone was saying the other day, like, has he been in a bad movie? Like, legitimately, like as a role in a movie, like not a cameo, but physical form. I won't that new Lion King, not the greatest, but
I refuse to watch that. We didn't need to do that. I love so much of that cast, but I don't need to see their voices coming out of like animated animals at me. Just not that way.
It's boring. It's really boring. I'm not missing. Go watch the original, because it's the same thing with a different style of animation and different voice actors, because that's all it is.
I saw the trailer and I was like, this Simba is dead-faced, but it's Donald Glover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on paper you're like, oh, but boom, awesome, you guys did it. But watching it, like, I have children, so I get to sit through these things, and that one was. Most of them have not been. Those have not been.
I have issues with Disney, but I've not watched remakes specifically. But like a lot of the times, I have to wonder, why is there no one hired to be like, just because we can doesn't mean we should? That's what a lot of these companies need right now.
Because
I'm your girl.
Money talks. Because even though as bad as they are, they all make, people just go. And it's like, and a lot of people, I think, have the attraction now that they have kids and stuff. They're like, oh, it's this generation's version of my thing. And that's like a thing. Like, kids aren't allowed to have their own stuff now. Like, I have noticed, though, with the younger people in the horror community, or whatever you call it, people on Twitter that talk to each other more about things than others. But I have noticed, and I like that, they're kind of frustrated. They're like, cool, another of the old people's things that's geared towards me. I'm like, okay, so maybe we'll see a generation come up that's creating new things and going to see new things because they want new things, their own stuff.
I am so much more excited when something's brand new, even if it fails, that I am to be like, oh, we're going to go do this again.
Yeah. Like, I mean, back in my day, the remakes, reboot, like, they were done for things that didn't work the first time, or maybe needed modernized, or had a new way of telling it. We're just doing the same thing. Like, I say, once Psycho got remade, it was all off. And once Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a success, you do everything again, and nothing's sacred. Like,
I knew when we rebooted Spider-Man 3 times in that sort of a time span, it was too much. And don't get me wrong, like, I am all about the adorable Andrew Garfield, and I love Tom Holland because Spider-Man's finally age appropriate, and Tom will look 12 for another 10 years, so we can do all the things. Right. But like, rebooting it 3 times, that's excessive.
Right. It's just Spider-Man. Like, we didn't even get to forget or miss him. Like, he was. And why? Like, I was talking about this too. Like, why? Like, just recast. Like, you're in theater. They're parts. They're parts. Different people play parts. Like.
Also, I'm especially pissed because Andrew Garfield left off with like a bit of a cliffhanger, because I mean, I don't want to ruin it for people who've not done that, because a lot of people are behind in life. But also, like, that was a very dramatic moment. And I was like, oh my God, Spider-Man's about to lose his shit in the next one. And they were like, reboot. And I was like, what? But again, Tom Holland is adorable. So, like, Let us have an appropriate Spider-Man for once, but also let's not reboot it again. Let's just keep Tom, maybe.
And if he's done, same Peter Parker, new actor. Like, people can buy. They're too worried about facial continuity, which is not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was, I have these conversations all the time, but like Batwoman, I thought was going to be a chance where we could fix this, where they were like, and I don't like. It sucks. It's like they pour the new actress, poor girl, threw into a bad situation. Like, but I thought, oh, Ruby Rose, just cast a new actor to play that same part. This could be huge. This could be huge. Don't kill her. Don't just. And they didn't. They're like, here's a new one, and then they bring her back anyway with a new part. Like,
for some reason, especially in American media, they are afraid of change. They're very stuck in those like 40s and 50s ideals. Right. And so like, it's the reason Christian Bale had to have an American accent for Batman. And I'm like, his accent's the least of your problems. Like, what you're doing to his voice, that's a problem. Because it was right. I don't understand this need to always make things American, especially when it's not. Yeah. I mean, when some of these comics were written in the 30s, I get it. There was a war specifically, and people were like, we need to like be proud of who we are, even though America's got problems. Yeah. But I feel like in theory, we've moved beyond that. So like, you can't be like, we're this melting pot, we're being inclusive, but also this person must be cis, hetero, straight white man always. Right. No accent even. And I was like, you can't even.
Well, my favorite thing is I always say like, people have like in life, they preach and want like these like strongly liberal, left-leaning, progressive values. But when you get into their fandoms, they're the most conservative frickin' people ever.
Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who. But Jodie, I almost want my Doctor Who cardigan, but I buried it somewhere. But when Jodie Whittaker was cast, people lost their shit. Like, people lost their shit. And they were like, the Doctor can't be a woman. And it's like, this alien regenerates and it's all made alien, up.
It's all bullshit. Right? It's
Women can't drive the TARDIS. River Song was driving it. Spoiler alert for those of you not put up on Doctor Who. It was the same thing with Ghostbusters. Women can't bust ghosts, and it's like, good sir, like, who are you? What are your real concerns here?
I like Ghostbusters 2016 quite a bit. So
thank you.
It was exactly what I wanted and more, because when I was talking, because there was always the Ghostbusters streak, I'm like, it's been so long since the goddamn Ghostbusters movie. I'm like, when I was saying it, I was like, let's do it again, but let's when you at its core, Ghostbusters was like 4 comedians doing a spooky movie about ghosts. That's what it is at its core. It's not Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd coming back and being old. No. So at the time, I was like, let's get Donald Glover, Jason Segel, James Franco, Seth Rogen. Let's have them be the Ghostbusters, go out and do it. And then they said, no, we're going to do it with women comedians. I was like, oh, even better. Yeah. Even better, because that takes away the expectation of those same characters. And I thought it was pretty funny that the uncut version's even better. And then they're like, oh, I won't even accept it to begin with. Like,
and then you have those men who would be okay with it if we could connect it to the men in the original, like these were their granddaughters or something, because that's not boring. And I need people to stop centering themselves in conversations they don't need to be in. It's fine if somebody has something one time. It's fine. Is this preschool? What?
Yeah. My favorite thing, the Doctor Who thing is, luckily with me, like I tend to like be a big doctor. I'm able to ignore and pass by. I don't come across. I follow more of the positive people with Doctor Who and stuff. Like I get one thing, people like every time they change the Doctor, every time they change the showrunner, it is now no longer 100% geared at you if you just came in there. It always wants to. That's how it survived. So it's going to be 60 in a couple years. Yeah. It's never. So you can either you go with this and just know, okay, well, if you genuinely just aren't liking something about the Jodie Whittaker era, that's fair. That's fine. But you also are probably the smart person to know, well, maybe next time with the next Doctor showrunner, I'll enjoy it more. That's fair. But like all these people who are these big longtime fans are hating all this. Forget all this history stuff that happens with the show that suddenly isn't a point, isn't all this to pull. And I'm like, you got, and they hate Chibnall, and I'm like, he's showing a lot of knowledge, and he's messing with stuff. And there's ideas from the 80s and 70s. He's pulled into the Jodie era, especially her second season, which I loved her second season.
Amazing.
And I'm like, the thing at the end with the Impossible Child, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's an idea from the Tom Baker era, and also was where they were going with the kind of with the Sylvester McCoy era before it got canceled in the 80s. So if you're gonna like, who doesn't do that? I'm like, the Who you like to point as being like proper shit did do that, and but now you don't. You just decide you don't. And they asked the questions about her doctor that I'm like, you didn't ask out of Capaldi, Matt Smith, like.
No, I love Peter Capaldi, and when they let him have fun, he was an amazing doctor, and I feel so bad because I feel like his first 2 seasons were wasted. And we gave them to Clara, and I just don't like Clara. But like his last season and like the one-offs, they were fun because he got to have fun and be a doctor, which is what he wanted.
Right.
And we don't talk about how those 2 seasons were rough. We talk about how
they
Jodie,
hold up better on the rewatch. The Capaldi ones the first time through were like. But I've gone back through them. I'm like, okay, this wasn't as tough as I thought going through it live. And the Jodie ones, her first season, just I liked her a lot. I liked some of the stories, but altogether, I just was kind of like, well, that's it.
It was very Monster of the Week, which I love hate because sometimes I feel like we do get stuck.
We don't get enough of it. Yeah. Too much serialization. Yeah.
But it also was because they didn't sign her on for a multiple-year contract. They signed her on for a 1-year contract because the BBC was like, we're going to cast a woman, but also. And I was like, no, stand your ground. Everybody else 3 seasons, give her 3-year contract. And so that's another reason she didn't get to have like more of an expansive first season. But the second one, they were like, let's start committing to her maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, you should, because
she's done very well. She's very popular. Like when they take the Doctor Who polls every year, and it's like, who's the most popular, and you finish like second to David Tennant or second to Tom Baker, and she's been consistently doing that. She's popular, and like I just don't think they get such an insular view that they only find the people that don't like it themselves, and then they bark loudly, like because they don't think they're a thing. But in general, people watch and just enjoy. Like that's the thing, and get excited, and they like Jodie, and I think she's been great. And she, like, I just like watching her talk. I'm like, I want to meet that woman because she just seems amazing. I don't know. How can you not think that about her?
All of her lockdown clips as the doctor, I was just like, this is precious. This is a queen amongst men, and we do not give her enough respect. And every couple of months, we're like, she's leaving. And I'm like, stop sharing these same old Sun articles.
Yeah.
Like, get a new one. Get a new link. And they're like, who do you want to be the next doctor? It's like, you would never do that if it was like David Tennant or Peter Capaldi. For Matt Smith, they would have, because they were assholes to Matt as well.
Yeah.
But then they were like, anybody but Jodie. And so now they love Matt. And I'm just like, okay, I see how it is.
Yeah. It's wild. And like, I always like, it's just, Doctor Who is just this thing that's always been there. It's always like, it's not die. Like, I'm sure at some point it goes away again, but we'll come back again. Like, but I mean, this shows, and they're like, oh, ratings. I'm like, ratings are down for everything. Everything. You can't point at ratings. It's still finishing in tops. Like the last special did very well. Like it's people are watching on HBO Max now. BritBot, like they wait. Viewing habits are way different. You can't compare it to the Tennant era. It just give up, folks. Like just sit it out. When there's a new doctor, come back, try it, hate that again, because they always they'll like Jodie once she's 2 doctors back. Like, it was better than this a-hole we have now. Like
I don't get it. And the fact that they keep trying to like latch on to like the cis straight white men in her circle to be like, that should be the doctor. It's like, Graham did not need to be the doctor.
No,
that was not Graham's role. And now this new person who's joining, I hate that I got spoiled because I try and avoid spoilers, but it was at the end of the last episode. And I was like,
Got John Bishop as Dan. I was like, John Bishop sounds like it could be a companion name, but it's the actor's name, and none of us in America know who the flip he is.
Right? And I all I knew was people were leaving, so someone was gonna join. I didn't need to know who. I didn't need to know a name. I didn't know what they looked like. Because like we could have brought back Mordo. We could have maybe finally got us River's song because I would like to see River and 13 meet because that's the story I want. And we know Alex Kingston is here for it. Like,
yeah.
Her response was amazing because she was doing like one of the cons the weekend Jodie was announced, and they were like, "How would you feel about going back on Doctor Who now?" And she was like, "I'm ready." Kissy noises. I was like, I'm obsessed with her as a person and as with her song. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very, very much enjoying the like it. The first season I was like, well, okay, well I'm a Doctor Who fan, so I'm coming back.
Yeah.
But and I had a few episodes like there were. If I picked an individual episode, I would really enjoy it. But as a season as a whole, it just was kind of like that. But that the last one, it became gotta watch it as it airs viewing again for me. And it hadn't been that way since like probably Matt Smith's second or his last season maybe was the last time I was like really diehard, like gotta watch it tonight. So I don't know.
When Amy and Roy left, the show kind of dipped. And then, of course, it picked it back up for Matt's going away.
Yeah.
But Clara was still there.
Not a Clara fan, huh?
She was the worst. She outlived her purpose. And it's one of those things where you invite a person and you need to know when they need to leave. And they just didn't.
She flirted with leaving, and then they had to change that one holiday special because she did stay. So her exit was supposed to be the one where she grew old. Like that was going to be it. That was going to be and then she stayed and they changed the ending to it.
Which I hate that because again, like she was the impossible girl. She did what she needed to do. Why is she still there?
Although we did get Heaven Sent and Hell Bent, which are amazing with her exit. So I will give it that. I love those too.
I am just salty that they grounded the Doctor when the TARDIS is a time and space machine, and you ground the Doctor so we can watch her and Danny Pink date. And I'm like, I don't care about her or Danny Pink. I don't.
See, here's the thing. Like, yeah, there's that. I didn't care like about the Danny Pink thing, but man, did they nail it in that finale with like killing him off. And I was like, oh well, he didn't deserve that shit.
I wanted to feel bad. I wanted to feel so bad, but I couldn't because I was just tired of being in their space. I was like, if we don't put this Doctor back in time and space, what are we doing?
Right. I will say, you know what? The Capaldi, we didn't get enough Bill Potts. Like, I was like, oh, she's really great. And then, one season.
She's one of my favorite companions. And the people hate her because people hate things that are good. Oh my God. You are so lucky to not be on the same Doctor Who threads. They hate Bill. They hate Bill. And I'm always like, I think some of you need to unpack a couple of things, but you know what? That's for a different thread.
Gotcha. My threads are, I go with a lot of old school meets new school type things. So people of us are like both, or like just the whole legacy of things. So I'm not really into like the hardcore, just new stuff only. Because I do a lot of like, I'm obsessed with the Blu-ray collections of the old series that have been coming out. They're amazing. And then I love new series too and stuff. So I've got a lot of people who work on like the production side of those Blu-rays, and then there's some different stuff with the classic things. But maybe the new people are just a little meaner about it. I don't know.
It's from all over because I came to Doctor Who late, obviously, because I'm not 70. I came to it very late. And you have these people who are supposedly been watching it since the beginning, who are just like, this new stuff is shit. And they just want to like be there to complain. I'm like, good sir, go somewhere else. And then you have the new people who are like, I've been watching this since David Tennant, and I've never seen a character who's more annoying than Bill Potts. I'm like, have you not? Because I can make an argument for quite a few.
Right. So like the thing is like, there are people who like they thought it was terrible when Troughton started. They thought it was terrible when Pertwee started. Tom Baker Tom Baker was the most popular of the classic era, but I'm sure people jumped ship with that. Peter Davison, they jumped ship. The Colin Baker, they all like a lot of people jumped ship. Sylvester McCoy, people jumped ship. Like the TV movie didn't pick up, but that Doctor was huge and Big Finish. Like, and people would like to see him have his own thing now. And then Eccleston, like, he had his one season and done, and like now he's finally come back to things. So I mean,
Yeah.
he was hard not to have people hate because he left before anything could have gone anyway. But Tennant's loved. Matt Smith, like Matt Smith's a surprising one because I was like, after Tennant, I'm like, good luck next guy, and then immediately forgot about David Tennant when Matt Smith started too. I was like, oh well, here we are.
I literally started Doctor Who like my last semester of grad school. So I started with New Who. So I did all of Eccleston's season in basically a day. And I was like, what do you mean he's gone? Because I didn't know they were about the generation. I knew different doctors, but I didn't know it's going to be traumatic every time. So I was like, and so David Tennant was there. I'm like, well, it's David Tennant. It's going to be fine. I love David Tennant. We're going to be fine. And then like I zipped through that and I was like, no, I'm not going to love you, Matt. And then like he was dipping his fish fingers in custard. Like, we might be able to be friends, Matt. And then the episode's like, okay, I love him.
Yeah.
So,
and it helped, like Moffat had this like fairy tale feeling to it that he added. Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, I could talk about this all day. I realized we're in the middle.
Oh yeah, damn, it's 10:40. Yeah. I love Doctor Who. Yeah.
Oh, me too. Yes, I will talk Doctor Who with you anytime. I do my old space show. I just did my friend Rachel and we went through Colin Baker's first season of that's her favorite Doctor. Oddly enough, the 6 Doctors are favorite, but we went through that season, and then like I paused and I moved to a different show and do that for a Quantum Leap, doing that for season, and then stuff like that. So I will keep you in mind if I do a different Doctor Who stuff. So
thank you. I'm working my way through the classics because a friend gave me their BritBox password.
Gotcha.
And
Tom Baker's my favorite Doctor of all time. Yeah. I do recognize that like for some reason the BBC like a lot of dude heavy casting in that, like just extras all around stuff. Yeah, like there, huh?
Always.
But I mean, but I like the writing. It's very Hammer horror influenced in his first 3 seasons, and he's got some great companions. Romana's really cool. She's a female Time Lord that just is not afraid to talk shit to him, and she kind of stands on her own with stuff. So she's really cool. And there's and Sarah Jane, like people love Sarah Jane, her era, and Leela.
I just got to Sarah Jane.
Did you?
Yeah, because I was like, I know she's coming. I know it's gonna hurt because she's no longer with us. And then she appeared like, and to know that she got started lying to him, I was like, this makes me love her even more.
Oh yes. Oh gosh, yeah. The Pertway's good stuff. I like all of it. I find reasons to appreciate and like all of it because like every Doctor is somebody's favorite Doctor. That's what I think in my mind. I'm like, you know what? This is someone's favorite one. So no, like, why do they like it? Why should I appreciate? You know, not all of it. Where I don't like everything, but you know, I enjoy going back through it. And always there's 800 episodes of television to watch. You know, like, man,
what's we gonna do?
Right. All right. Well, I will move on to now our what else. This is where we talk about other things we may have taken in or watched, read, maybe something we wrote, put out in the world. So, Sharai, what else?
Ooh, awesome. I of course have that production happening in October in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I am still getting details because that was a new announcement. Okay. But it's for my play In the End, and it is a very personal play that I wrote a couple years ago. And so I'm happy that's what stuck with Onyx Festival, and they were like, we like this, and this should be this production. Because it'll be its first actual production. It's been read a lot and it's been workshopped a lot, but it'll be nice to see it on stage.
Excellent.
I also have a 10-minute in a festival in July for Play Zoomers. They don't have a website yet, so you have to just sort of like keep sort of like checking out my website because when I get details, I'll have it. But a friend of mine, Dr. Teddy Rodriguez, will be directing my 10-minute Edmund Fitzwater Doesn't Have Any Answers for You, which is a weird little sci-fi piece that I love. Auditions need to happen for that like yesterday. So we'll have a lot more details very soon.
Gotcha. By the time this posts, they're probably already there. So
yeah, it'll be like, we cast it. It's good now.
What a cast too, and
right?
What a cast. Yes.
I'm obsessed with everybody. I couldn't have made a better choice if I wanted to. What?
Oh man, can't wait to see them in action. All right, myself, we're recording this like 2 weeks before this will drop, but should be now that I'm gonna double up that word and drive myself nuts. I will be on a panel for the Here Now Festival which is taking place in June. This is taking place June 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is called Off Mic, Developing and Producing for Geek Culture Podcasts. I will be joined by Rachel Friend, who you will know from being on this show before, of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, and Brandon Wentz from the Crit Show podcast. We'll just be talking about, you know who he is. All right. We'll be talking about not so much making the show like mics and stuff. That we're going to talk about other things that come with podcasting that you might not think about, like other challenges on you as a person who has full reign and control of your podcast, shortcuts you may have, or, you know, just things you won't think about when making a show. And we really want to teach people about that, how to handle it, how, you know, and we'll have horror stories, fun stories, rewarding stories, and Q&A. So it's an hour long. If you go to the Here Now Festival's website, I'm sure you can purchase tickets to be able to be part of that event if you want. It's virtual. I will not be going to Kansas City for it, but please tune in or, you know, support me telling people about podcasts, I guess. So, all right. Well, that'll do it for today. Sharai, I would say fun. I would say so much fun, but those are underselling the time I've had here talking about the Meteor Man and things I've cut from this episode because we went way off topic talking about Doctor Who. I know my listeners, I wonder if my listeners just like, God damn it, he's talking about Doctor Who again.
The best topic though. Like,
and it always comes up and I'm like, oh, I just magnetized other Whovians.
Is it a prereq to be on the show? Did I pass?
It might be. I give the questionnaire? Like,
yeah. It's like name, age, what do you do? Do you like Doctor Who?
Yes. Favorite story, Time Lash. Oh. Nope.
Favorite companion, Clara? Nope.
No, not ever. So yeah, this is great. So before we sign off here, let people know where they can keep up with you around the interweb socials. Take it away.
Yeah. So like, if you just want to check out my podcast, that's fair. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Nightmare Fierce, all one word. We also have a lovely Facebook if you'd like to do that. And that's our full title, A Nightmare on Fierce Street. If you would like to keep up with me and my own personal shenanigans outside of that, I have a website, which is my first name, lastname.com. And I will just let that be the notes because my first name and my last name are confusing. And so when you see it, you'll get it. And I also have a social media presence on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Sharai, MISSSHARAI. So I'm super findable.
Super findable. There we go. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. My written work is at whysoblue.com. There is more from the Brandon Peters Show this week. But until then, always remember to keep the positivity in your online film chatter.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.